pretty broad title for this panel, could go anywhere. So building games on blockchain. I guess to begin with, it's sensible for everyone to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they've been doing over the last few years and if they've got ongoing projects. So Andre, do you want to tell us a bit about Decenter?
Okay. I'm founder of Decenter, which is a Belgrade-based startup, more of a R&D center, basically. And we come from a blockchain background. We actually got into gaming almost by accident, you could say. So, yeah, we are primarily focused on blockchain and building on top of Ethereum. We actually really believe in the Ethereum platform, and we think it's going to do some revolutionary changes in the world. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we are completely focused on that. We don't have a single project of our own, but we keep doing R&D, like following all the trends in the industry, following technology, and yeah, we got into gaming after the CryptoKitties happened last December, when we not figured that it would be probably the next big wave of things, and that's when we started working on Cryptage, which is our fully decentralized browser-based game.
Okay, so you're making a game as well as doing the kind of research.
Yeah. One of our projects right now is a decentralized game. Yeah.
Good. Okay, Emmanuel.
So hi everyone. My name is Emmanuel Okoro, and I'm from Ugasoft Blockchain. So we're based in developing blockchain applications, and we have currently a blockchain game called Crypto Baron. We've been developing over for 1 year. So our team are made up of game freaks, and the first time we came in contact with CryptoKitties last year, we were like, okay, yeah, not so fun. Let's try to do something that is like kind of interactive, that game players could get kind of addicted to. So that was what took us into blockchain game. And
you guys are based in Nigeria?
Yeah,
right?
We're based in Nigeria, and sometimes we'll have some Finnish companies involved in our projects.
Cool. Gareth.
Hey, I'm Gareth Jenkins. I am the founder of Deckbound, which I started in 2014. We've been doing blockchain games, tech, and games since then. So we released a game called Deckbound Heroes, which is a TCG way back in 2015, which is originally based on Bitcoin transactions to represent cards, which was fun, given the timing of the scale of Bitcoin at the time. That's still an ongoing project that's been transitioned over to somewhere else in terms of the blockchain backend. That's something else we've built. And I'm also working on a game called Lunar Mines, which will be out later in the year, which is super exciting. And if you heard my talk yesterday, there's a little bit of info about that there. My background is as a games developer. I've been in the industry for most of my career, and also a technologist, and I'm a huge math nerd. So I got into crypto for math reasons, really, way back in 2013. So that's my background.
Cool. Good. I guess to set the scene broadly, you can disagree with this if you want to. I guess where we are at the moment is we're still in the realm of dApps. I suppose that's kind of still where certainly the games that are being played are. I guess we're starting to see the first movement away from that with client PC games. But do you think a dApp's a good place for the industry to be? Is that just a stepping stone to get us to better things, or are we a little bit degrading of the kind of CryptoKitties of the world, which have shown what can be done? What's the view on that? Anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So I think CryptoKitties is great because it allows us to describe what the hell it is we're all doing. But one of the biggest challenges that we had at Deckbound was just trying to convey what we meant by blockchain games. It's a really broad topic, though. There's lots of different things that fall into that, and dApps. And I wouldn't describe CryptoKitties as a true dApp based on how it's implemented. But this idea of a fully decentralized game is, I don't think, anything that anyone in the games industry is that interested in working on. And I think it's a bit of this kind of ambitious theoretical ideal, which we're probably not going to get to. However, if you start to pull apart little bits of that, dApps actually are a good place to demonstrate that. And I think people's attachment to this idea of ownership of tokens and things is a strong one to build off of, and it relates nicely to the games industry. So we've just got to find that middle ground and communicate better to people what it is that we're doing, I think.
So Andre, you'd say you are doing a browser game. So
yeah.
Why did you decide the browser was the kind of platform that you wanted to go for?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the best thing to do. I think it's just one of the things that people need to try out. It's like a kind of evolutionary process right now, and we need to try many different things and see what works. We didn't care much about profit or the monetizing the game. We just wanted to test the limits of the technology and see how far we can go. So basically, we made a proof of concept game, which is not necessarily going to be profitable, but it works. I mean, it is a game that's actually playable, and it doesn't have a server.
Can you go into a bit more detail about what the game
is? Yeah, sure.
It's
a combination of idle and collectible games. Idle is those games that you just click a couple of things and then you leave them running in the background, which was a step ahead at the time because all we had before were CryptoKitties, which started everything, and then lots of clones, Crypto Countries, Crypto Cities, Crypto whatever. We said, okay, we can make a collectible game with any kind of game mechanics that's going to be a step forward. So that's what we did, and yeah, actually we got a game that's running on the Ethereum blockchain. It's not easy to do. We had to do a lot of low-level research into how EVM works, how to bundle lots of data into a small number of bits in order to make transactions as small as possible. It's still costly to do. I mean, if you save the state on the blockchain once per day, you still need to pay a couple of dollars right now, which is obviously not great for adoption. But I think that's a great proof of concept that's going to scale along with the Ethereum network, and it's going to lower the bear. So yeah, to summarize, I think dApps are the only thing that people need to do, especially if they're in this for business or money. I think there are like different kinds of compromises that people are making, many of which we saw here. But yeah, dApps are interesting to us. We did dApps before we got into gaming, so we just kept on doing that. So yeah.
Emmanuel, you're doing client games, is that right? Is it playable on the browser?
Platform.
And mobile as well, isn't it? Is that
Yeah,
right?
mobile as well.
So why have you decided to go for that? What kind of challenges have been thrown up by, I guess, your kind of cross-platform game?
I think like our sole aim is like to not just to target the blockchain gamers as a whole. We're trying to look at mainstream gamers that are used to other games. So we find out too, like because of some plugins and interface, most blockchain game developers choose to go web. So but we try to like do a game that can be played both not just on web but on the mobile too. It's not so easy to do, but what we do is like we use the traditional gaming engine for the front end and just use the blockchain as the back end. So like the other colleagues say, it's quite difficult to do a decentralized game totally on the blockchain. So that was how we're able to achieve a cross-platform game, using the traditional gaming engine as the front end and just the blockchain for the back end.
Just before you go on, I think there's something that you can pull apart here on the browser dApp thing. dApps aren't browser games aren't dApps. Like I think technologically, from a games perspective, there's a misassociation that happens there, which we need to work around. Lunar Mines is built in WebGL. It runs in the browser, but it looks like a client game. We just happen to build it in the browser because it's a lot easier to build blockchain-connected apps when you've got the browser ecosystem surrounding that. We happen to have the experience of doing raw GL stuff, so it kind of was easy for us, but if you're coming at it from a non-games tech perspective, it's easy to say, okay, well, a browser game is a dApp, and et cetera, and so on. So yeah, I mean, the other side of that is that commercially, I think anyone who's trying to build a client game that's reliant on existing third-party middleware or platforms is going to really struggle. Like, you need to have the flexibility to move between platforms, and doing something web-based it has its problems, but it is more flexible.
I guess I kind of feel compelled to ask this question, although I don't know whether I should. So it's something, I guess, as journalists we get maybe more wound up about than developers, I'm sure. But obviously Ethereum is kind of where Sebastian's side had 95% or whatever projects are on. Obviously, as we always talk about in blockchain game conferences, scaling, that kind of thing. We should just have a question about what do you think is the blockchain? Does it really matter? Do you guys care about it? Do you just kind of think Ethereum will eventually just have to solve itself because it's the predominant platform that has the developer support? Anyone keen on EOS or something?
Well, I think like for us, we like considered other blockchain platform, but we went for Ethereum because of its consensus. It's like proof of work, and maybe like a whole lot of arguments about like which one is more secure, proof of work or proof of stake or other like consensus. So we think like there've been like a whole lot of dApps on Ethereum, irrespective of whichever difficulty or problem they are facing, because of the community support and some other like developers around Ethereum, they might like 1 or 2 days get around the issue they're having. So being like the current blockchain that is like quite stable, that was like our main choice, and I think like that should be like a good choice, like going for Ethereum. I don't know about others, of course.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we've kind of run the full gamut. We were doing Bitcoin originally, and then by the time it was clear that wasn't going to work, it was also clear that Ethereum wasn't going to work. And where that's led us to is saying, well, actually, the speculative economic risk associated with any financially motivated blockchain isn't going to work. So where we've ended up at is building out a blockchain specifically for digital assets that doesn't have a currency or a token. Having said that, we are using Ethereum and Lunar Mines for smart payments, and I think it's great for that. I don't know of a better example right now of this idea of programmable money. I think it really has delivered on that vision. So for us in our game, this is specifically with Lunar Mines, players can contract services from each other, and those payments go through Ethereum, and those payments are bridged over to Delox, which is the blockchain that does the asset ownership. So that works really well for that specific example. Now, whether that works for other things is yet to be proven. If somebody comes along with something that allows us to do actual digital assets, like objects on a blockchain, without the risk of the speculative economics, then that's great. We'll jump at that, but I don't see that
The
right now.
speculating is kind of part of the fun, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, as far as, well, Ethereum is the only one of the blockchain teams that doesn't make compromises when it comes to decentralization, and that's what we like about them. They have issues, they have like scalability issues, adoption issues, and yeah, lots of other things that are like big showstoppers at the moment, but they don't compromise. We've seen other like smart contract platforms that make compromises with centralized servers, delegated proof of stake, and other consensus mechanisms, and we just don't believe it, that we kind of think it defeats the whole purpose of blockchain, because the technology as an idea has a set of core ideological principles built into it. That's what we believe. And yeah, we are aligned with Ethereum Foundation's vision about that. So that's why we believe in it, that it will be, if something survives and if something breaks through all these barriers, it will be them at this moment. So yeah.
I guess another theme that we've kind of seen over the last 2 days, it's kind of quite strong, I guess, from game developers coming out. It's the game before the blockchain. Which kind of makes sense. It has to be a good game first before the blockchain. But equally, sometimes I do kind of wonder if now we're getting to the stage of trying to abstract the blockchain away so much to attract people in that we're maybe losing some of the excitement of what the thing actually does. How do you kind of feel about that as you're making games? How does blockchain fit into your internal vision of what you're going to do? Presumably it's central to that. But then how do you tell your players, your potential audience about it without, maybe it attracts them, maybe it scares them. I guess that's kind of the problem. It cuts both ways.
Yeah, I mean, we've got both experiences on that. DagBound Heroes was fantastically well received by players, well received in the blockchain space. There wasn't really a blockchain gaming space at the time. There was like, there's no one here right now, but there was a few of us at it, but not very many. The problem was we were then building a proper video game that was being played as an esport that people wanted additional features that wasn't finished and was based on blockchain tech. That was quite a challenge. And to a lot of the people who liked the game, the things they liked about it were there because of the blockchain tech, but they weren't excited about it because of blockchain. They just really liked the game. Now, that's great, and we're continuing to work on that in the background because it's a really cool game. But it doesn't really help us in terms of communicating this vision of blockchain games. So Lunar Mines came about as a result of saying, okay, we've got this cool tech, how do we describe it to people? And the design of Lunar Mines is just an abstraction on top of what we're doing on the blockchain. And originally it was just going to be hey, here's what we're doing, here's a cool proof of concept thing. But actually our proof of concept turned into this really cool game. So we're treating it as if it is a real thing, and hopefully people will respond well to that. I've also spent a lot of time speaking to other companies, mainly in the game space, about using our tech and other people's tech for the back-end side of things. And having nearly 20 years worth of experience in the games industry, there's all kinds of problems that we can solve with blockchain, but they're not blockchain games. That's just using blockchain as a technology to solve a particular problem, and that came up a few times yesterday, I think, in talks. So yeah, I think you just got to pick what it is that you're doing. Are you doing a blockchain game? Are you doing a game with blockchain technology, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, Emmanuel, your game is called Crypto Baron, so there's no getting away from it. It's a blockchain game. But do you find that attracts an audience? I mean, is that why people are going to be playing your game?
I think it depends on which side of the audience you're talking to. To someone or to a group of people that have been exposed to the blockchain already, that's what is attracting them. Because I mean, the whole concept of asset through ownership gives not just game players, not just drive interest to game players alone, but also for example investors, they can just buy those assets for speculation just purposes. So if you're not talking to gamers, I think like just like the gameplay and like how fun is your game, like is what interests them the most. So I think like just like he said, it depends on what you really want to achieve. But I think like building a whole game just on a blockchain is not like we're not yet at that stage. I mean, like judging from the platform that we have already, that's like judging by Ethereum blockchain or some other platform you're looking at. So it depends. Like, are you like using the blockchain for payment processing or just minting assets? So I think like it depends on what you're looking at.
Andre, we don't even know the name of your game.
It's Cryptage.
Cryptage. So
Yes.
you're kind of transparent on it, I suppose.
In what sense?
Well, it's crypt.
All right, yeah.
In terms of the name, sorry.
Somewhere in between, yeah. Yeah.
So, but so are you, when it comes out, you're going to be actively marking it as the crypto,
Yeah,
crypto-based game,
definitely.
and you think that will?
From the very beginning, we were targeting people who are in blockchain world already. We never thought that we would attract someone into this who is not already in the blockchain world because of all the barriers that we didn't want and couldn't really overcome. MetaMask, acquiring Ether, and everything else. But yeah, with this game, we were actually toying with the idea of making a game that's fully decentralized. So not just the technological decentralization, but also a political one. We were thinking, if we make an open source game that's on the blockchain, so we are no longer controlling it, but people can control it, maybe through some DAO or something like that. So yeah, we actually think that things could go in that way, at least one branch of things. Because yeah, we actually got into it based on our experience with online trading card games like Hearthstone, which can be really frustrating sometimes when you invest a lot of time and effort into obtaining some cards, and then Blizzard comes and says, okay, this card is no longer that powerful because we figured that it's imbalanced. And yeah, people can get angry in such situations. So we were thinking, okay, what if we have governance of a game that is managed by community, by players, instead of one company that optimizes their decisions just for profit. So yeah, that might be a bit controversial here, but that was our thinking.
Go on, I'll pick that up. That is controversial here because from a game's perspective, I don't know, there are that many people that would say that Blizzard act in the interests of profits alone. I think they're one of the few developers that have a reputation for saying actually what they want to do is make games that are fun for people to play. I don't think they're nerfing cards because it makes them more money. They're nerfing cards because they don't think that they work in the game anymore. And that's like, I was touched on this yesterday in my talk, it's a fundamental issue between the idea of decentralization and decentralized control and making fun games. So we can say, yeah, let's make this decentralized thing and let's remove all of these problems and these things that we don't like or we think that we don't like, but actually what you're going to end up with is games that aren't very fun to play. And that's a difficult problem to solve. So you've got to say, okay, are you making a game that's fun to play, well-balanced, etc., or are you making a thing that's decentralized? Because they're not the same thing.
For us, it was, yeah, I think that in our mind at least, one pulled the other. We were thinking if you make an open source game that anyone can fork and then build on it, that players will tend to converge to the one that's most fun and most balanced. So yeah, when you have an open source world where everything is shared and there are no like closed doors, you'll end up with something that's like suitable for the majority of people, rather for.
Which works, but maybe not for TCGs. Because unless you're going to fix the cards and say, okay, we'll never release any new cards or abilities, it's very difficult to get consensus amongst players because they're always going to have conflicting interests.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but for other genres it works. I think there's some really interesting genres where that could work.
Okay, let's try and put our look into our crystal balls and kind of look into the future. Where do we think kind of blockchain games are going? Say, I don't know, 2019. Will we just kind of, will it be kind of a continuation of where we are, or will there be any shocks? Will there be any kind of games that come out and really kind of raise the bar? Anything that you've kind of seen that is interesting, or will other things happen? Like, do you think regulation will come in, or things outside the game space that could affect in a positive or negative sense? Any predictions for next year?
I don't think we'll see any major shocks next year. I think we already had a shock with the emergence of the entire industry, basically. And yeah, everything that's happening now, all this development going on, that's just the impact of that new idea coming into existence. And yeah, I think it's just gradual improvement for now. We'll see new games released. We'll hopefully see some sense from centralized app stores, and which will start allowing.
Yeah, you're quite keen on decentralized apps, aren't you?
Yeah, I think they're like really slowing down the adoption and the process of evolution of this thing, because they're afraid that they'll lose their piece of the cake in it if they allow people to trade freely between themselves and use currencies that are not controlled by them. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'd like to see. I'm not sure if we'll see, but hopefully there will be some kind of reaction, because the wave will be too big to ignore.
So in that sense, do you see distribution as kind of the biggest kind of obstacle to adoption at the moment?
Definitely. On all platforms right now, like they're all always gatekeepers that say that whether your game is like allowed to be published or not. So yeah, we need to see some like leaning on their side towards blockchain and crypto, and like for them to accept that technology is here to stay and not just some fad or some speculative money.
I mean, do you think it has to be the kind of current incumbents have to change their policy, which none of them seem very keen on doing at the moment, or is there a realistic opportunity that you will see, you know, some blockchain-based distribution platforms actually gain decent scale, you know, in terms of like millions of users?
That would probably be
Can it happen?
the best possible outcome.
But can it happen? I mean, it's
Well,
definitely the best.
theoretically it can. Why not? We can have a decentralized app store that's governed by DAO or something like that. But yeah, to see that in the current way things work, yeah, I think it cannot happen in less than 5 years or so. Just like rough approximation.
I think on that idea of a decentralized store, I think we have that. It's the internet plus cryptocurrencies. Like I don't think there needs to be that much more. The infrastructure exists for that to happen. I appreciate that from a marketing perspective, it's a challenge not having a storefront to put games in front of people. But that's the reality that we live in. And if we want to build these things, we've just got to get on with the tools that we have. I like the idea that someone might come up with something that allows us as blockchain game developers to get in front of an audience and say, here are all the coolest blockchain games. But from what I've seen so far, I'm not sure what that is. Like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what problem we're trying to solve, because you can't do the let's just replace the App Store thing, because the reason the App Store is the way it is, aside from Apple's general mentality on how they approach things, is that they're bound by legal issues that they're not going to be able to fix themselves. Like, they're really big challenges to work around. So you can't just replace the App Store or the Play Store or whatever with something else. That's not going to work. So what is this thing that we're looking for? And I don't know what that is. But going back to your question, I think the next couple of years, I don't know whether it's 2019, but the next couple of years, I think you're right, we probably we'll see some cool games. I think everyone here is working on cool stuff. That's really exciting. But I think actually before we see any major like changes forward in terms of what blockchain games are, we'll probably start to see blockchain show up in regular video games and other places. And there's things going on in and amongst other companies where they're starting to use blockchain tech to solve just quite boring problems. And that's exciting. And hopefully we'll see that, plus all the cool little games that we're working on, converge to a, wherever we are 3 years from now.
I mean, in a longer time frame, do we think, you know, in terms of 10 years' time at least, do we think at that point every game, to some degree, uses the blockchain because it just makes sense to solve a lot of kind of boring problems?
No,
Really?
I think there's a future where we're all living in virtual reality and ownership is represented on something that was once called a blockchain. Like, that's definitely what's going to happen. But let's not go too far down that route, because we start getting into the whole living in a simulation thing, which we are. You're going to get to a point where you say, what's the difference between what we described as what we were working on and just the technologies that we all work with? Somebody made the point earlier, I can't remember who or when it was, apologies, about you don't describe a game as being an internet game because it uses the internet. Like, we will be in that situation at some point. I don't know whether what we have now in terms of blockchain tech is what that will be, though, and maybe we won't call it that, but I think we're at the beginning of something cool.
Emmanuel, I didn't ask you for what you thought was going to happen in 2019. What are your thoughts? Are there any other interesting games you're seeing?
Well,
I guess more interestingly, I mean, in terms of what's the blockchain scene like in Africa, is that going to take off? Do you think?
Like in Africa?
Well, I guess Africa's a big place. I mean, Nigeria. I guess are you seeing other developers coming into blockchain games there? Is that a movement, or are you guys kind of the only ones?
Well, I can say about game developers in Nigeria, because I mean, like, there's not like much community to bring them closer. But that was like among one of the things we're trying to achieve, because I mean, like, we're not just building just one game, Crypto Barons, but we are trying to build a platform for other blockchain games too. That's why, like, we started like developing the different models for this platform, like having our own wallet that other people can use to build their own games, having our own like storage application that we call the Tandonet that other people can use. So we believe, I mean, like, with effort like this, like building up platform that people can easily build games from, then I mean, like, I couldn't do not but to be more positive that it will interest like other game developers in Nigeria. But I think like globally, yeah, I think I'll go with Elon Musk saying that it's better to be optimistic and be wrong than being pessimistic. And so I think like I'll be optimistic like my fellow speakers. But I see like a whole lot of work to be done because giving game players true ownership for their game asset also like comes with like other security issues, like taking care of your wallet and making sure that the private key is secured, and it's a whole lot of other issues. So things might go well like in a couple of years to come, but there's still like a whole lot of work to be done.
It's a good thing you mentioned platforms, actually, because talking about distribution is probably one thing to talk about. We are starting to see a rise of kind of blockchain game platforms trying to solve that, the distribution, and I guess seed that kind of item interoperability thing. I guess kind of BitGuild is the one at the moment that's kind of, I guess, got the most traction. Do we see there's a place for those kind of platforms as game developers? Is that something that attracts you to, I guess, be in partnership with them, be distributed through them, or kind of get access to their community as much as it is? Or are we still at the stage where you're kind of just happy to kind of do it on your own?
Well, I think there's a few enough of us that we can all work together with whatever it is that people are doing, and help each other out in terms of promotion, which is realistically all we're talking about now, is a means to get in front of people. As a game developer, the idea of jumping at the opportunity to be on yet another platform is not something that excites me. But that's because I've grown up in the industry and had gone through that many times over. And there's no part of working with platforms that's fun. Like, it just ultimately, it's not a thing that you kind of say, yeah, this is what I want to do. It's a thing that you have to do. And there are definitely good and bad experiences with that. I've had some excellent experiences working with platform providers. I've had some really awful ones. And I think that the same is true for most people. So I don't think that's something that you jump at just for the sake of doing it that way. But if there's an opportunity there to promote your things and get them in front of people, that's awesome. Whether or not there's something interesting that that platforms could do for blockchain games that hasn't been done by existing platform providers, that's an interesting idea. I don't know what that is, but maybe someone's working on something cool.
Andre?
Well, I tend to agree. I mean, there will be a place for platforms if they offer some kind of additional value to both players and game developers. Right now, we don't see much value. Although we are integrated with BitGuild, we just...
You are?
Yeah. We thought it's not difficult to do, and we might get some extra exposure, because that's the value we get, exposure to the players. But since there is no currently market for crypto players, then we don't believe that right now we could get much additional exposure from them, but we'll see where it goes, maybe. As the market emerges, yeah, they might actually start offering value. So.
Cool, good. So I've had some questions. Anyone else in the audience? Oh, you should be on the panel, shouldn't you? We'll just wait for the microphone so everyone can hear. They're all good questions, though, so keep asking.
Thank you. Wonderful panel this far. I'm very, as you are peeking to the crystal ball, what are your thoughts on the, how important will the publishers and the VCs be? Because I personally feel like the low quality of the crypto games is what's holding it back, since it's in a pioneering stage due to the tech and whatever goes around it. But at what point do you see that? Do we first need a angel VC game or something like that will break through and show that the crypto tech can work, and then the more if we are talking in a million range, VCs will step in and kind of take a high risk, high reward kind of investment? Or what's your thought on that?
I've got a few thoughts on that. So there's no shortage of money flowing into crypto games. There's been plenty of it. I don't know whether it's gone to the right people, but that's a different matter. You often find that the people who are good at raising money aren't necessarily the ones that are good at making things, but sometimes they are. I don't know that throwing money at the problem is the solution, though. And like you say, the low quality of existing games, I completely agree with you. That's probably the biggest problem in terms of wider adoption. But that exists across the games industry. Like, there's no shortage of crappy games. They're everywhere. So that's just a volume thing. Like, if we make more blockchain games, some of them will be really good and some of them won't. So I think that's solved by getting more people involved, not necessarily by throwing more money at it. And having worked with publishers on a variety of different projects and spoken to them about blockchain games, their interests don't necessarily help us in regards what blockchain's there for. They could do. There's some really interesting opportunities there, but I think it's on us to prove out that we can do this technologically and deliver something before we jump at that. Having said that, there's some publishers that just want to make CryptoKitties games over and over. So.
Anyone else have thoughts?
Yeah, I think like for me like what would like it would just be like the first game that would be like so interactive that people will get like kind of addicted to playing the game. You know, like yeah, crypto. I agree with the last speaker that it's not like about the fun. Like CryptoKitties raised a whole lot of money and they had like a whole lot of transaction during the first few months that they launched. But the daily active users as of today have reduced because there's no interactiveness in the game. So I think like the first game to be so interactive, like and like have a high retention rate, will like expose blockchain games the more.
Yeah, I'd agree that money is the least of a bottleneck in the entire blockchain industry. We all know that there is more money than needed, but maybe too much money in the blockchain industry right now. So yeah, that can even have adverse effects. But yeah, bottlenecks are, I don't know, talented developers and people pushing the boundaries of technologies. That's what we need right now.
I think it's definitely a good point you were alluding to. The publishers are there, they do provide funding, but they also provide a quality bar, and obviously the product managers and publishers spend a lot of time making sure, you know, that the game fulfills the vision of the team and also kind of fulfills what the publisher wants as an audience. So I think that kind of level of polish, I guess, is maybe something that we're lacking.
Because I was wondering if they consider that there's an extra risk due that they don't know the blockchain enough. So they consider that, oh, this is like, there's even on top of the normal risk, like, is this a good game? Will this succeed? Will they consider that we might be if this wouldn't be a blockchain game, but now we're going to back off because there's even that extra risk for us?
That's a really good point. And I think like the difference between what's a blockchain game and a game that uses blockchain, and can those two things exist independently, that's kind of core to that. From my point of view with Lunar Mines, like that's quite deliberately a game that exists because of the blockchain, runs on the blockchain, uses blockchain tech, and you can't separate the two apart. But there aren't that many examples of blockchain games that fall into that category, and in fact, most examples you can take out the blockchain bit, the crypto bit, or vice versa. So I don't know how a publisher would approach that. Actually, thinking about it, like they'd have to have a vision for a game that was blockchain oriented, or I don't think they would look at something and say, okay, let's just force the blockchain model onto this, or vice versa. Maybe some of them would. I don't know. They'd have to approach it with that. Let's make an actual game that builds on this idea of the blockchain.
I think what is interesting, we are starting to see, well, at least one company, Lucid Sight in the States has done a few blockchain games of its own, and now is going to be publishing like a third-party game from someone else. So I guess you'll start to see publishers, developers of blockchain games who have funding or success, then become publishers. That probably be maybe the more organic way.
We'll also get, sorry, just very quickly to round up on that, because this is really interesting actually from a publisher perspective. The problem that publishers solved originally was doing the things that game developers couldn't or wouldn't do for themselves. And a lot of the time now, in terms of how we deliver games to an audience, we don't need those functions of a publisher. But you know, going back to when you did need a publisher, you really did. Like you couldn't do that stuff yourself. It was really hard. And maybe there's a similar situation coming up. Some of the things that we're having to deal with on a daily basis are not the things that game developers want to have to deal with. Like we're spending the majority of our time dealing with tech, security, finance, legal, etc. So maybe there is a role there that someone who was like a crypto publisher or blockchain game publisher or whatever you want to call it could step in, and maybe that's one of the existing players who's got some track record of doing things. Maybe it's somebody else, but maybe there is a new publisher type role.
Good point. Cool. Any more questions? Good. Okay. Well, I think at that point we're a little bit early. If we just say thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you particularly to Gareth who stepped in at the last minute, but Emmanuel and Andre as well.